Pose was groundbreaking when it sashayed onto our screens 3 years ago and put a spotlight on trans and queer black and brown people. The show helped usher in an era of more representation for queer voices of color and popular culture. Here to break it down with me, it's Clay Cane, political commentator and host at SiriusXM Radio, and Jared Hill, co-host of the podcast Fanty and president of the Los Angeles chapter of the National Association of Black Journalists. Thank you guys so very much. I'm going to say this right here up front. These are two of the smartest minds out there. These guys keep me correct and informed on these kinds of issues on a regular basis. So, Jared, I'm going to start with you. Just tell the audience a little bit about what is the significance of a show like Pose? Because from my perspective, you know, the presentation of queer black people on TV has always been like, you know, the captain on Brooklyn Nine-Nine, or I think it was the Michael Holt character on Spin City a couple years ago. These sort of safe, desexualized gay black men. What makes Pose so significant in our current sort of media environment?
I think what makes Pose so important, and first of all, I want to say, like, saying we're the smartest people that you know is a lot of pressure to put me on national television. But I do think that what's important about Pose is recognizing that we've never seen queer people of color in a show with this level of production quality that told these kinds of stories about queer and trans people, that really unpacks the ball culture of in New York City back in the 80s and early 90s. And so I think that we are getting to kind of see queer stories in a way that we've never gotten to see them before. And we hear this kind of conversation a lot about, like, well, we never get to see XYZ on screen. And I think that's something that we hear so frequently that it kind of loses a little bit of its power. But when we think about the ways that we're getting to see queer people and queer people of color specifically on this show, the importance of that is really looking at the ways that we are able to start to see more different kinds of what I like to call black diversity, right? So we have, like, the images that we see of black folks that are in families. We see them in, you know, the workplace and things like that. But now we're getting to see more and more images of black folks on screen where we're able to not necessarily need to see ourselves reflected in every single thing. Now, mind you, I'm a black queer person, so I'm seeing a lot of myself reflected in this show. But I think really the importance of this is that we're able to not need to see ourselves reflected in every image and not feeling so disassociated from the content if it doesn't look like us, because we're getting to see more and more of these images. And Pose did such a beautiful job of showing black queer people loving each other. And I thought that was the most beautiful part of Pose.
So, Clay, recent polling and data and information shows us that actually the amount of LGBTQA representation of black and brown people has increased on television every single year for the last couple of years. But as is the case with all black people, a lot of times these images are not being created and these stories aren't being written by black people, let alone black queer people. What do you think, as we see more of these images, as more and more black queer characters show up, what do you think is still being missing? What do you think we're not hearing during this Pride Month about the black gay experience that, you know, all too often is sort of ignored or downplayed?
Well, when you think about media, sadly, black queer folks have been regulated to the reality show Sidekick, the tragic closet case, or the random character that's dying of HIV or AIDS. And when I think of Pose and when I think about moving forward, it reminds me of a quote from Zora Neale Hurston, where she says, "I am not tragically colored." And that's how I feel. I am not tragically gay. I am not tragically black. And the great thing about Pose, and what I think we're going to see more moving forward, is we're no longer going to be regulated to these LGBT tragedies, right? You know, with Pose, you have black queer folks behind the scenes writing. You got to be involved in this kind of content. So for me, the difference is us being in control of our own stories, us being in control of our own narrative. There were folks who were in Pose who were actually a part of this ballroom scene back in the 1990s. So again, it goes back to Zora Neale Hurston. I am not tragically colored. We are not tragedies with our identities. And for me, that's really powerful. That's important. And it's the only way to go moving forward, even when it comes to the black stories, that we have to make sure we're in control of our content.
So I want to ask you this because, Clay, I've heard you talk about this. We've had conversations about this both on and off the air, that you say all too often when black queer stories are presented, the experience of racism within the queer community is sometimes downplayed or dismissed. Can you talk a little bit about that, how intersectionality is still important when we're writing about black characters and black queer characters in particular?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, when you think about when I was younger, for example, when I thought of LGBT folks, I just thought of white people. to be honest with you, this may sound crazy, but when I quote unquote came out in 95, I didn't know that Black queer folks even existed. So there has really been a co-opting of LGBT identity, just to be quite frank, that you normally see white, middle, upper class, cisgender men. And so you feel like you're removed from it. You feel like you're not a part of it. And so one of the things that Pose did is that it managed to show the racism within the LGBT community. You know, folks think we're all some corporate, rainbow flag at Target, but we're actually not. There's a lot of racism that really you get penalized for it if you call it out. And if I can just add one really quick thing, even from a political side of it, you look at someone like Caitlyn Jenner, who is for some people the face of transgender folks. She's running for governor of California. She can't even say that Trump lost the election this past week. I mean, Caitlyn Jenner sides with a party that is anti-LGBT, anti-trans, yet she aligns herself with that. She's turning into the, Senator Tim Scott of the trans community. We're not calling that out. You look at someone like Kristen Sinema, who was a Democrat, who got all this press for being bisexual and being elected a senator. Yeah, she's basically a Dixiecrat, and she's holding up relics of Jim Crow like the filibuster. So it just goes to show you being LGBT does not remove you from your privilege when it comes to race and wealth.
Jared, I want to close on this because this is a key thing. Some of the most amazing advances that we've seen in Black and Latino queer presentation has been in comic books, right? You've got Marvel has its own Pride comic book. You've got all those CW shows that have sort of Black and brown queer characters. But something that often concerns me is this idea that, you have these Black and brown and Asian characters who come out queer, but they still keep the white ones straight. No one ever suggests that, maybe the Winter Soldier and Captain America had something when they were, trapped in the, fighting the wars and everything else like that. Do you see these sorts of moves as progress, or do you still think we have a lot of work to go as far as sort of decentralizing straight white men and heroism, despite the number of Black and brown queer characters we now have?
First of all, I want to let the people that are watching know that that I'm not a comic book person, so this is you trying me. But I do think that this is one of those things that it may be like a half step forward, right? Like we're getting to see queer representation and we're getting to see people of color, but we're doing it in a half step kind of way. And so when we're seeing whether it's Marvel or DC or other places that are kind of incorporating people of color that are queer, it's kind of like where they're also checking off two boxes at one time, right? They're excited to get the diversity points for the Black person and excited that they're also trans or excited that they're also queer or whatever it is, which, yes, that is a step of growth, but it's also a question of like, why can't we see these other marginalized groups being represented in various different kinds of ways? And so to the point that you're making about like, yeah, we can see the queer person if they're a person of color, but not our shiny white person. That is a problem that continues to persist. And I think that as we look at this through the lens of like the zeitgeist more largely, I think that we're going to see that looking back on it. So oftentimes we try to censor things in white narratives that were like clean and crisp and beautiful. And then when it comes to, the people of color, we don't give that same opportunity. So it will be interesting to watch these things evolve over time.